Today we're going to be talking about Season 3 of Guilty Gear Strive and all the system mechanic changes that they have done to the pre-existing mechanics that are in the game. If you're looking for information regarding the new system mechanics like Wild Assault and Deflect Shield, I've already made videos covering those two topics on this channel as well. Do check those out for me if you don't mind. But in the meantime, I want to add one thing that I failed to mention about Wild Assault in my other video, which is if you break the wall with it, you get a hard knockdown just like a super knockdown. So that's going to be something kind of important to consider, right? If you don't have the tension gauge to get a hard knockdown, you can instead get the knockdown with Wild Assault, maintain your offense, get that positive bonus, etc., etc. To help illustrate some of these changes, I have a cool little setup with me today, where if you are looking at Kai Bad Guy and Sol Kisuke, I'm going to call them, on your screen right here, this is the new patch of the game. Whereas if we are looking at Sol Bad Guy and Kai Kisuke, that is the former patch of the game. So we're going to be able to do direct visual comparisons here. I haven't updated the PlayStation 4 just yet, so I'm able to play the old version of the game. So without further ado, let's start breaking down a couple of things regarding some of the just general system mechanic changes. So they reworked Burst. The Burst gauge replenishes faster over time. There's a lot of interacting with it now since Wild Assault does damage to the Burst gauge. You have mechanics suspended on, of course, now, right? One of the things that happens as well is going to be negative penalty. So if we look at negative penalty in the current version, you will see that it takes, let's go ahead and get rid of some display things, so I don't need the virtual controller to be displayed right now. You'll see that it gets rid of my burst gauge and my tension gauge. In the old system mechanic, if I incurred negative penalty, which I'm trying to backdash here, but I did not bind my dash macro to my usual spot. Tournament setups, am I right? So if I incur danger, negative penalty here, my burst stays intact. I do have to kind of tweak that setting a bit. We are not going to have that auto regenerate. We are not going to have that regenerate either. So you can see I only lost my tension gauge before, but now if you incur negative penalty, you also lose your burst gauge, which makes sense, mind you, because now there's a lot more things to be doing with the burst gauge. We're not just spending it on bursting, as it were. There's all kinds of new defensive mechanics in there, so they want you to be punished for being a little too passive and campy. Negative penalty has always been something that happens in various Arc System Work games. They like to encourage proactive play. This is one of the ways that they do it. Negative penalty is even far worse now, so just be aware of that, especially if you have a character that has retreating moves that incur negative penalty. This is a character like Happy Chaos with his curse. This is a character like Axel Low, right? So just do be mindful of those things. In addition to that, burst gauge now replenishes on wall stick. So we're going to have Kisuke with his burst here. And then we're going to take him into the corner. And you can see when I stuck him to the wall, he gained about 25 to 30% of his burst gauge back. Why did they do this? This is to nerf wall slump pressure. Because now, if you are trying to spam wall slump mix-ups, you are literally giving your opponent an incredible resource that gives them access to a defensive mechanic that beats highs and lows and pushes you back, ending your offense. And you are also letting them regenerate the option to burst. So wall slump loops are still in the game, but you are giving your opponent an opportunity to play and interact with you instead of just having to hold the next mix-up by giving them that important defensive mechanic resource. So I think wall breaking is going to be something that they want to do a lot more of, but don't forget, with Wild Assault, you can get that hard knockdown, so a lot of give and takes happening within this system. In addition to that, let's talk about Blue Psych Burst. If you guys have been following my channel as I was going over the content that we were getting out from people who were sharing information from this build at various fighting game tournaments, you'll probably already be aware of some of the changes to Blue Psych Burst, right? So I think a really good way of demonstrating this is to swap out a character. Let's do Axel Low. So we're going to have him do Rensen, and we're going to have him try to do a follow-up from it, right? And now I'm going to make the opponent burst on the first hit. So, as you can see, burst is now a full screen option. This is only blue burst, mind you. If I stand back here and I try to gold burst maintains that same range. This is namely just so that they are able to nerf some of those long-range combos like Happy Chaos had, as well as the burst-safe routing, because in the old system for Guilty Gear Strive, if you were there were characters that could basically route and do combos that denied the opponent's ability to burst. You usually have to commit to, excuse me, need to change this to that. You would have to, like, hard commit to a burst bait up close, but if you were a character like Zato, who could go into the ground and ignore burst, if you were a character like Happy Chaos, who could shoot you out full screen for a combo and ignore burst, or Mei, Nagoriyuki, that could pop you up high enough to where you actually couldn't burst them because of just how they designed the combo routing. That's something that you saw a lot at high-level play. That is now gone. You do not have that option to bait burst like that anymore. Blue burst will work in those situations, but you can still do burst baits, though. Do not get me wrong. That is still very much a part of the game, right? So, like, if I make Axel here do his burst, you could still jump cancel. You can still jump cancel and bait it. You can still do a Red Roman cancel, right, and bait it. There's ways to bait it, but it's a lot more about player interaction now, instead of just, I've designed my route so I don't have to interact with you. And additionally, if you start a combo off with Wild Assault, you have to remember, right, that you do take away some of that opponent's burst gauge. So, you know, if I don't want to deal with your burst, I can just throw Wild Assault into my combo and deny your burst that way. So that's going to be something very important, where managing your burst gauge in this version of the game is going to be monstrously important for all of those changes. I do have to, I think, go back to character select to reset this one up with the proper colors. But it was worth it to demonstrate the system changes that happen with Blue Burst. Now let's talk about Gold Burst next real quick. Gold Burst has a very simple change to it, where it is overall a nerf. Just for consistencies, we're going to also change the stage. Gold Burst before, if you did it under the old patch system, you created a very volatile, swingy situation where if you hit it, you got a full burst pretty much immediately. So you had, not full burst, but full tension gauge. So this was a very huge comeback mechanic and power spike that could happen, right? Like if the opponent whiffed a meaty on offense or whatever, or they're looking to throw you, and you woke up with this RPS option, you basically just got, you know, a free super into RC option, right? So tons of things where it was just a demonstrously huge, and sometimes it was just an auto win. It's like, oh, he's got 100 bar now. I literally can't interact with him anymore. Gold Burst does not work like that anymore. Instead, Gold Burst gives you positive bonus. You'll also notice, too, that any version of successful bursting does not give you any burst gauge back. But what does happen in positive bonus here is that you do see that Gold Burst gives you positive bonus. So I'm generating tension gauge, but not only that, I've also generated quite a bit of burst gauge up there. You can see the two differences right here with Kai and Soul, depending on which version of your burst just hit. And Soul has tons of this burst gauge back, so positive bonus is massively important for allowing you to use Deflect, Shield, Wild Assault, and getting your burst option back, right? So there's just a lot more of this sort of interaction with this gauge happening now in this patch, and I think it's pretty cool overall. Burst isn't really the static thing that defines one mechanic, it's this hyper-interact thing that really lets you make choices as a player to how you want to play and approach the game. They do say that they've changed they reduced the knockback on hit for Blue Burst, but I'm gonna be honest with you, friends. I kind of don't see it. Right, I'm pushed back pretty far here. It's like we're almost back to full screen. Whereas, you know, if we look at the old version of the game, it kind of looks like the same distance, right? Like I'm not seeing it. I'm not sure how much it's actually been reduced or where it's been reduced, but maybe this is something that we will be finding. Blue Psych Burst has more active frames. It just goes with it going farther out with it, right? They fixed an issue where it wouldn't activate in Circuit Edition, so a bug fix there. Yellow Burst we've already kind of went through. It does reduce the amount of gauge that is consumed when you do it. It increase the attack level of it, right? Now, there is one quality of life change has happened as well. So, if you ever were trying to press like a Roman cancel option, and you got hit out of it, you no longer lose that tension gauge. So, they removed this little feature or bug where you might be pressing like a Roman cancel option, right? You might be trying to fuzzy mash it. The opponent leaves a gap. They frame trap it. So instead of getting a yellow RC, you get a blue RC. You get hit out of the startup of it before the time freeze effect happens, and you already lost the tension gauge. That feeling kind of sucked. But now they made it so that before the time freeze effect even starts, so probably right around here, I would say, where right before you see the screen go dark and the time stop is applied, you can see that Soul here still has that 50% tension gauge to him. I'm actually curious if I can show this as simple as that on the old version of the game. Right, so it's still sort of there, but it might have like had a delayed sort of application to it. Like we see here, the time stop isn't finally started. We still have that tension gauge. But there were situations where you could get hit out of something like this, and then you lost your tension gauge, you got hit out of it, so you're just doubly losing, as it were. So they applied a change to that one. It's a little hard to demonstrate here. I apologize for that, but it is something that they have addressed in the patch. Yellow Roman Cancel has an important change. It now hits opponents who have strike or throw invincibility. What does that mean? So there is a technical play that you could have done if you were absolutely cracked at the game or you had a particular read on the opponent's offense where, let's say we got to give both Kai and Soul here some meter to work with. And then I got to make it so that Kai is going to do an auto yellow Roman cancel here. So there's situations where, and then I have to make him block. Imagine. This is how you set up various training mode stuff, friends. I hope I'm able to teach you all this. So you can see here that if I time my super correctly, I'm actually able to bait and punish out this YRC so that, like, there's a call out to it, and I don't even have to do it like that. I could also do a DP as such, right? So you could have this hard read and strike the opponent out of it, right? But now, if we look at the new patch of the game, and I try the same situation, and again, forget to do all the proper setup for it, it does not matter when I get this super to come out. I get hit out of it. So there's no more like DP baiting and punishing a YRC. So they buff Yellow Roman cancel, so that now it's just a more consistent, powerful defensive mechanic where you have to commit to defensive play instead of an aggressive one to bait it, which is more than fine, right? Because if you just block this thing normally, then you're in a pretty good spot to get a punish anyway. They changed it. They did a bug fix to Flawless Defense. There is one mechanic that some people might not be so like aware of here, and I'm just going to do my best to demonstrate it here. So I need Kai to get hit by this. And that is if you hit this dust. Oh, that's so funny. I forgot to turn that off. If you hit a fully charged dust, you will now see that if you do the finishing blow, which is the very end of that dust combo, you get positive bonus now, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because, I mean, we were effectively breaking the wall. We were changing the stage, right? We were getting like a knockdown, as it were. But we weren't really getting that. We never got positive bonus. We just got that high damage combo. But now they gave another way to access positive bonus by buffing the fully charged dust combo finisher, the finishing blow. So that's something that's in there at a high level play. Not really going to come up too often, but, you know, now there's a little more reward to it. And honestly, if you're a character that is able to somehow create a setup where it's so hard to see it, a character like Asuka, for example, could be potentially fairly terrifying to deal with. The last change is a pretty remarkable change. Now, there is one like aesthetic change where they changed some of the visual indicators for counter hits. I'm not going to go into that one. But one thing I want to address, actually, is a big change to system mechanic stuff, right? So we are going to have to bring in change character. We're going to bring in a Potemkin, right? And I'm going to do my best to remember my soul bad guy combos. As well with that, and while we get that one set up, we're also going to set up the same thing here. So change character, Mr. Potemkin, do come in. So the thing with Potemkin is that in the old version of Guilty Gear Strive, you kind of had weight classes going on with it, right? So what that meant is that there were characters who were light, there were characters that were normal, there were characters that were heavy. And that had a huge impact on the combo game that you could do, right? So, you know, something to like that. And you see how high Potemkin goes up there. Now, if I do this combo on the old version of the game, you can see, like, how just much lower Potemkin is here in this example. To the point where I don't even, like, get the combo route that I, like, did before on him, right? But if we look at the current version of the game, I'm doing the same route, and it's not really... You can see here that it's harder for me to link this 2K on the old system, and that had to do with Potemkin's weight class. He was a heavyweight, so he fell faster to the ground, but now he's not. Now he's as heavy as Kai and Soul, and the characters who were even lighter are just as heavy as that. So I think this is a very great change overall. It makes Guilty Gear Strive far more accessible to players, because instead of you having to memorize weight classes and combos for depending on like what character you were fighting, now if you figure out and lab a combo, it's most likely going to work on every character in the game. There might be some variance just due to the hurt box size of the characters. Like, you know, Potemkin's hurt box is far bigger than a character like Jacko's, for example, right? But that's a very nice change. It's nice that in a game where they've done a lot of homogenizing for getting rid of unnecessarily complex mechanics, they finally added that to Guilty Gear Strive as well. So lab combos on whoever you want, it's all going to work out the exact same. And that is it for all the general system mechanic changes. They've done a lot of unifying things that are across characters where they reduce damage or some counter hit things like that as well. But I'm going to go into that as we explore each individual character starting kind of like now in the next video. So thank you all for watching. Catch you around.